time. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. Dear colleagues, I'm glad to co-chair this joint IMCO-URI hearing in association with PETI. On behalf of the Committee on Legal Affairs, I warmly welcome the efforts of the organizers of European Citizens Initiative to engage citizens in shaping the European Union legislative agenda. The issues raised by the European Citizens Initiative, entitled Stop Destroying Video Games, with an impressive total number of 1,294,188 signatures across the EU, touch upon various important matters, and we look forward to a constructive discussion on how EU can better protect consumers, creativity, and of course intellectual property rights. With that, I would like to give the floor to the Vice Chair of the PETI Committee, Mr. Ushakov.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, the organizers of the European Citizens Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. On behalf of the Committee on Petitions, I would like to warmly thank the organizers for bringing forward this initiative and for the strong support it has received from citizens across the European Union. The European Citizens Initiative is a unique tool that allows people to have a direct say in shaping EU policies. Reaching more than 1 million verified signatures from many member states is a remarkable achievement. It clearly shows that this issue matters to citizens. From the perspective of our committee, this topic is very relevant. We increasingly receive petitions from citizens who are concerned about digital products that stop working when companies no longer support them. Many people feel frustrated when a product they have bought, especially a digital one, becomes unusable after a certain time. They raise questions about consumer protection, clear and fair contract terms, and whether digital products should remain usable in the long term. These concerns often reflect a feeling that consumers are at a disadvantage compared to service providers. The initiative we are discussing today addresses these concerns, particularly in the area of video games. It raises a question of whether games as digital goods and creative works should continue to work and remain in function state after their commercial life cycle ends, without requiring ongoing involvement from publishers or companies. More specifically, the initiative calls on the European Commission to introduce rules that would, first of all, ensure that video games remain playable after their commercial life cycle ends. Second of all, prevent them from being remotely disabled. And finally, without requiring companies to continue investing resources or running services indefinitely. This is a complex and technical issue. However, it has clear importance for consumers, for legal clarity, and for the functioning of the digital single market. It also raises a broader question. Are our current EU rules strong enough to protect consumers in the digital age, or do we need to go further? Today's hearing is an important step. It gives the organisers the opportunity to present their initiative and to engage directly with the European Parliament. I look forward to a constructive and informative discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much from my side, from IMCO side. Also, welcome to this hearing. And I said it before, I'm always very impressed when citizens collect so many signatures and use the avenue of the European Citizens Initiative. And I can just confirm also what the colleagues have said in the last term, especially when we worked in IMCO on the right to repair, but also, of course, in the ENVI committee on the eco-design for products. We always were faced with these problem that some products just don't get updates anymore and continue to exist after a couple of years, although they could live longer. This is bad for sustainability, but also bad for consumers. So I think this citizen initiative is very, very interesting. Before we hear the petitioners or the organizers of the citizen initiative, I will give the floor to the Commission. And I welcome Giuseppe Abamonte, Director of DG Connect, and also, again, Isabelle Perignon, Director from DG Just. Welcome to the two of you, and I'm looking forward to your opening statements.
Honourable chairs, honourable members, dear organisers of the Citizens' Initiative, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to take the floor. I'm speaking on behalf of the Executive Vice President of the Commission, Henna Virkkunen. She and Commissioner McGrath met the ECI organisers on the 23rd of February. We had a first exchange which launched our formal analysis of the matter, and today is another key step in our ongoing dialogue. There is the 14th successful ECI submitted to the Commission with over 1 million signatories across 24 member states. It has clearly met the test of credibility, reflecting the concerns of a vast number of European citizens. We are addressing a critical industry, which is the video gaming industry, employing 100,000 people and generating 22 billion euros revenues in the EU. So the sector is one of the most important of the media policy and is central to our economy. So it is a core pillar at the same time of modern European culture. The central issue is the end of life of these works. Modern game development often relies on a model where publishers can unilaterally terminate access once a game is no longer deemed commercially viable. And this brings us to the heart of the legal complexity. There is clear tension here, since we understand and acknowledge the sentiment behind the Stop Killing Games initiative. You highlight a growing public anxiety, the total loss of digital property, and erasure of cultural artifacts once a service is shut down. On the other hand, video games are protected by copyright, which is an intellectual property right. Publishers enjoy the exclusive right to exploit their works, including determining the terms under which they are made available to the public. Any regulatory intervention, such as mandating end-of-life support, must be analysed with extreme care, as it touches upon the fundamental rights to property, which is a fundamental right protected under the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and the principle of contractual freedom, which is also indirectly protected. So the challenge will be investigating how and if we may balance the respect for the publisher's property rights and at the same time ensuring that our cultural heritage is not permanently lost to technological obsolescence. With that said, I would like to pass the floor to Isabelle Perignon, my colleague, the Director for Consumer Policy in DG Just. Isabelle, please.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Honourable chairs, honourable members, dear organisers of this citizens' initiative, I would also like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's discussion. I am present today on behalf of Commissioner McGrath, who unfortunately cannot attend, but he has already met with the organisers of the citizens' initiative, as we just mentioned. We all agree here with that the importance of fair and transparent conditions for European consumers that need to sign up and pay for video games. We must remember that video gaming has a value that goes beyond economic figures. It has a societal impact. 3 in 4 Europeans play video games, and the average player is still 31 years old. And I'm sure you will be impressed to know that, contrary to common belief, some segments of video gaming also attract some women and some more than men, and that is the case of mobile gaming. So now, before considering new solutions for the issues raised by this initiative, we first need to carefully examine to what extent it could be addressed through better enforcement or adaptation of existing rules. EU consumer law does not currently impose any specific requirements on video game providers regarding the duration of the supply. Nevertheless, EU consumers are entitled to transparent information about the digital services they are offered, and they are protected against unfair commercial practices and unfair contract terms. So we are currently assessing with my team the application of the Digital Content Directive. We are also working, as you know, on the impact assessment for the upcoming Digital Fairness Act, which aims to strengthen consumer rights in the digital environment. When assessing this citizens' initiative, the Commission will analyse whether, beyond better enforcement, there is a need to update our consumer protection framework to address some of the concerns identified more effectively. And this is just one of the angles we are studying prior to our reply, which is due, as you know, for the end of July. So this is why at this stage we are not taking a position on the specific solution proposed. We are carefully analysing all dimensions of this initiative, and I'm sure that many of the exchanges today will bring us new avenues for reflection. So thank you, Mrs. Chair. We are now very much looking forward to the presentation of the organisers, and of course, of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introductory statements. Indeed, we are very much looking forward to the discussion. As I said, such a citizens' initiative are vital instruments of participatory democracy, enriching the debate by bringing citizens' voices directly into the legislative process. I hope that discussion today will help us to ensure that innovation continues to serve both creators and users fairly. The organizers of the initiative are presented today. With us we have Mr. Daniel Ondruska, welcome, Mr. Ross Scott, Mr. Moritz Maximilian Kanzner, also welcome to you gentlemen, Mr. Alberto Hidalgo Cerizzo and Mr. Marcin Barkzik. Welcome to all of you, and according to the program we have around 15 minutes for your introductory remarks, starting with Mr. Ondruska. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Daniel Ondruska and I am the representative of the ECI Stop Destroying Video Games. And for our purpose, it stands in the title, honestly. We are trying to prevent video games from being destroyed. We see video games not only as part of our culture, but also as products, and in both cases worthy of preservation. But unfortunately, the practices in the video games industry are hindering both of these and threatening video games as a medium. What we hope to achieve today for you is to explain the problem, what we have done to try to fix it at least, and why we believe new regulation or new rules are necessary. Just as it was mentioned in the beginning, we are representing European customers and consumers who have not had a voice on this issue for a very, very long time, and therefore we are very, very thankful that you are hearing us out today. And I would say that we could start with the slide deck, and I would then hand over to my colleague Ross Scott.
Hello, I am the founder of the Stop Killing Games consumer movement, which has many shared goals with the initiative. I'd like to clarify what it means to destroy a video game. The second slide. When we say a game has been destroyed, what we mean is a publisher has permanently disabled all copies of it that have been sold so no one can ever play them again. It would be like removing every single copy of a book or film in existence, effectively erasing it from the culture. The way this practice works is first a publisher sells a copy of a video game. However, it has been designed so that it must connect to the publisher in order to function. This acts as a potential kill switch. The customer is also given no information when the game will stop working, even though the publisher has decided to assume that responsibility. Then, after an undisclosed length of time, the publisher disables all existing copies of the game but keeps the customer's money. The publisher also enacts countermeasures to ensure repairing the game. To ensure repairing the game is almost impossible, even for experienced software professionals. From this point onward, no customer can ever run the purchase again. Besides destroying the game, this practice is also subverting customer expectations. Most video games can work indefinitely, which has been the customer standard for half a century, including ones that connect to the internet. Alternately, a small number of video games operate as subscription services, but those inform the customer exactly when their access ends at the time of payment. The games we're referring to do no such thing. It's a bit of miscommunication. They almost always contain terms stating they can end at any time for any reason. What this means is customers have no real protections when they buy games like these. They are unable to keep them and they are not informed when they will end. This behavior would be outrageous in other industries. If you bought a book in a store, the publisher cannot come into your home and take back your book at will. If you bought an insurance policy, you would be informed when that policy ends, not that the seller could end it at any time for any reason but still keep your money. The games being sold this way are operating similar to scams. Publishers know customers expect video games to last, so they sell these in the same way as ones that can work forever, as a one-time purchase with no expiry date, then price them the same. Publishers know that if customers were informed exactly when they plan to disable their games, that would reduce sales, since the longevity of a game affects how much customers are willing to pay. The industry is trying to have it both ways, finding ways to say they're selling you a game that they're not selling you. This creates confusion for everyone involved and is part of why it is taking customers so long to get exposure on this practice. The legality is also unsettled. Earlier, members of Parliament assisted us in asking questions to the EU Commission about how legal the terms and game license agreements were, especially being able to terminate them at any time for any reason. The Commission stated Directive 93/13/EEC prohibits unfair terms causing a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations to the detriment of consumers. The Commission also recommended consumers file complaints with businesses across member states through the European Consumer Centres network. In 2024, we had volunteers across the majority of EU countries submitting complaints against the French company Ubisoft for disabling the game The Crew. The responses we received from the ECC network were extremely inconsistent. Some officials said there was nothing they could do. Others said the company was required to run the game indefinitely, which is unrealistic. But the majority stated there was no clear regulation on this practice. We were independently able to get thousands of complaints submitted to consumer agencies in France and Germany, but there still has been no decision on them on the legality either. To the best of our knowledge, no one in the EU has ever been compensated for this and hundreds of other titles. In short, governments in EU countries are not sure how to handle this situation, and customers are overwhelmingly not being compensated for the loss of their purchases. It is an ideal situation for clear regulation. This is not a new practice. It started approximately 2005 and began negatively impacting customers for them around 2010 onward. However, it often affects a minority of customers whose complaints can get lost in the system. It wasn't until a large case affecting millions that any attempts to get government attention were possible, and there still is no answer. The EU Commission says this must be handled on a case-by-case basis, but this practice is extremely widespread. Future slides. We have formed an amateur study examining over 1,100 video games that require a connection to the publisher. The majority of these have been deliberately disabled by the publisher, with many of the rest still at risk of being destroyed. Under the strictest interpretation of what it means to disable a game, the study found that out of over 400 titles, publishers disable a customer's purchase 93.5% of the time when ending support. This business practice is responsible for more destruction to the medium than anything else by an enormous margin. There is also a strong correlation between this practice and the size of the publisher, as most small studios do not engage in it, as it requires far more resources, work, and liability than they can handle. So even though this impacts a minority of games, it disproportionately affects customers due to the scale of the largest offenders. From sales figures, it impacts tens of millions of customers, minimum in the EU. This impacts developers as well. This may seem obvious, but based on interviews and feedback, we found the majority of game developers do not support having games they've worked on destroyed. They can spend years of their lives creating them, but they are often not the ones making these business decisions, and sometimes even sign non-disclosure agreements, so they cannot voice their opinion on the matter. The main point I hope that does not get lost in this hearing is this initiative welcomes any solution that will solve the problem of video games being destroyed on this scale. We want this to be as easy and as practical as possible for all parties involved, and are very open to how that is achieved. We are not even asking publishers to change their business or monetization models, only that once they end support, they do so in a responsible way. Our only goal is to prohibit this destructive practice and thus obtain basic protections for consumers and the medium as a whole.
Next, I would like to address the honourable members on a huge issue that we faced during the campaign, especially the start of the campaign, the fact that the whole discussion is very unclear because the technical solutions are so difficult and there's also a lot of pushback by the industry. So I'd like to raise to some proposals we've seen from the industry to masquerade as proposals, but are simply unrelated to our issue wholly. Some examples of these are clear labelling, minimum support times, and voluntary end-of-life plans. These are not solutions, nor are these even compromises. They do nothing to fix the problem of games being destroyed in its essence. As far as labelling goes, most customers are aware of the problem, but each game is unique creative work and technical work. There is no substitute for each one any more than a book or a piece of music can be substituted for another. Their uniqueness is the entire appeal. So customers can feel carried into license agreements they would otherwise never agree to because they have no other option if they wish to experience the game. They are agreeing in absence of any alternative to playing games. As for minimum support times, this is unrelated to our issue. The same goes for notices of when games being shut down. We have no problem with publishers ending support at all. Any time they wish, we only ask that they do so in a responsible and reasonable way. Finally, the option of voluntary end-of-life plans is quite literally the state where we're in now. While we appreciate when this does happen, our research shows it happens only about 4 to 6% of the time, and these conditions are exactly what led to getting over 1 million EU citizens to sign the initiative itself, requesting the EU government to address the problem. Appealing to government is not our first attempt to solve this. There have been multiple attempts coordinating thousands of people to contact companies such as EA or Ubisoft, a European company from France now residing in Canada, so far as back as 2016. In every instance, there was a refusal by companies to allow customers to retain their purchase, in some cases even actively taking their games from their libraries. Next slide, please. A statement made by the European lobby group, Video Games Europe, of which companies like EA, Ubisoft, Roblox and others, so the really big players in the video games industry here in Brussels and globally, are part of, about the movement, has said as much. They not only mischaracterised what was being asked for with endless support, something the movement has never sought, but also claimed one of the reasons for disabling customer purchases is that they represent competition to official versions. I translate this: it is a business model to shut down the game to get players to play their next game. Next slide, please. We're exclusively talking about games where official versions are disabled. In other words, the industry is claiming that customers playing old games could reduce sales for new games, thus they should be free to disable their purchase. Not only do we disagree with this reasoning, but we find this entire stance extremely customer hostile and unacceptable in regards to what the European Union outlines as its purpose and its track record of protecting its consumers and outlining clear market rules, so there is no uncertainty for companies, which could also harm innovation, especially for smaller studios. Their stance has been very consistent that customers are not entitled to keep their games purchases, nor be informed when they will be taken back from them. We're happy to work with publishers in solving this problem in any way that addresses their concerns, but there's been a flat refusal by the publishers, and I must press this. There is no monolithic industry. It is the big publishers in the most part, and even there from Poland, GOG, the creators of Cyberpunk are an exception to this issue, large exception to this issue. We have exhausted all other avenues for trying to get this problem solved, hence why we're here today. It is our sincere hope that the honourable members and the Commission are going to be able to find reasonable solutions for all parties involved.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Your Honours. Thank you for your attention. I'm Professor Alberto Hidalgo Cerezo at University San Pablo CEU Madrid, a PhD in law, Jean Monnet professor dedicated to consumer law harmonization, especially on digital consumers. I'm a member of the European Law Institute as well, among any other associations. We're getting a little bit short on time, so I'll be fast with my intervention. Thank you. It is based on 3 basic points. First one, we've got it on the screen right now. We're seeking for a rebalance, for an adequate consumer protection in the digital single market. We are addressing what we consider an unfair practice. When a game is functional, it should not cease to function as a result of a deliberate and avoidable decision. This raises concerns on planned digital obsolescence, where products are rendered unusable despite remaining technically viable. Under the current framework, national authorities are reaching divergent solutions, which undermines legal certainty for the EU consumers and fragments the digital single market. In the lack of an action, we may end up reaching incompatible solutions among the 27 countries. There is thus a clear need for harmonizing rules, a common European approach necessary to ensure fairness and consistency. Second, please, next slide. Second, European Union as a global leader in consumer protection. Nowadays, it is almost impossible to develop as a full citizen without being a consumer, even more a digital consumer. We all buy goods and services in our daily lives, taking part in the single market with a high level of protection. In the end, it's easy to see, protecting European consumers is protecting European citizens. Primary EU law remains constant in securing a high level of protection for consumers at the maximum legislative level in the EU law. For instance, Charter of the Fundamental Rights of the European Union, Article 38, Union policies shall ensure a high level of consumer protection. Or the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, Article 12, consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defining and implementing other Union policies and activities. Or 169, in order to promote the interest of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumer protection, the Union shall contribute to protecting the health, safety and economic interest of the consumers. There's a lot more, but we're keeping it easy. What we want to stress is simple. This is a call from the primary EU law that we should not miss. Third and final, real example of the terms and conditions. Now, as proof of the problem, please, next slide. Now, as proof of the problem, here's a real case and user license agreement clause. Company, Zenimax, Bethesda. Game, Fallout 76, clause 7, termination. Zenimax may terminate this end user license agreement at any time, for any reason. Upon termination by Zenimax for any reason, all licenses granted in this agreement with respect to the game, blah, 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 shall immediately terminate, and you must immediately do point 1 and 2. Point 1, permanently destroying all copies of the game in your possession, and 2, removing the game client from your hard drive. We believe in the end that this practice is unfair for the European consumers and incompatible with the aforementioned articles from the primary EU law. Therefore, we are kindly asking your honours to stop this kind of unfair practices. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Since we're out of time, I'm just going to say that my name is Marcin Baczyk. I'm attorney at law, president of the Intellectual Property and New Technologies section of Krakow Bar Association and member of Legal Tech Institute of the Polish National Bar Association. And I'm here to answer any legal questions, in particular these related to the intellectual property law matter. And I'd like to add that the European Union has a long-standing tradition of advocating for consumer rights. That is why, on behalf of 1.29 million of EU citizens, I ask you to grant both consumers and the cultural heritage in the form of video games to grant the protection they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that concludes your presentations. No, you want to come in again? Okay, thank you so much. So you heard the applause. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you want to come in again. You pressed the button, but I think we listened to all of your arguments perfectly well. And now, of course, we have the moment for the members of the Parliament to come in, ask questions, but also comment. And we start with a round of coordinators for the EPP. I have 3 coordinators, 1 minute each. We start with Axel Voss.
Vielen Dank an alle Vorsitzenden. Zunächst einmal recht herzlichen Dank für die Vorstellung. Also, ich würde auf Deutsch reden. Ja. Entschuldigung. Also, aus rechtlicher Sicht handelt es sich ja eben auch um Videospiele als komplexe Werke, die durch EU-Urheberrecht auch geschützt sind und häufig eben dann auch mehrere Rechtsebenen, einschließlich eben Lizenzen Dritter auch miteinander verbinden. Das wirft zunächst einmal die zentrale Frage auf, wie lässt sich eine Verpflichtung zur Gewährleistung des fortgesetzten Zugangs zu einem Spiel mit dem Grundsatz vereinbaren, dass die Rechteinhaber das ausschließliche Recht haben zu entscheiden, wie und wie lange ihre Werke zugänglich gemacht werden. Also das wäre eine erste Frage. Zweitens möchte ich gerne die rechtliche Machbarkeit hier auch besser verstehen. Auf welcher Rechtsgrundlage innerhalb des Urheberrechts könnte eine solche Verpflichtung festgelegt werden? Oder befinden wir uns nur im Verbraucherschutzrecht sozusagen? Und ein praktischer Punkt wäre, wie sollte ein solcher Rahmen eigentlich Situationen behandeln, in denen eine fortgesetzte Verfügbarkeit aufgrund abgelaufener Lizenzen nicht mehr möglich ist, beispielsweise für Musik oder andere eingebettete Inhalte. Ich glaube, dass diese Fragen insgesamt entscheidend sind, um hier sicherzustellen, dass jeder Ansatz rechtlich fundiert ist und in der Praxis dann auch umsetzbar ist.
Herzlichen Dank. Now Pablo Arias Echeverria. Also for 1 minute if you want to. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Desde la perspectiva de mercado interior y derechos del consumidor, bueno, yo creo que es un tema que debemos de analizar. Claramente hay que dar la enhorabuena a los que han llevado a cabo esta iniciativa y sobre todo por el éxito que han tenido. 1.290.000 firmas no se recogen todos los días. Así que debe ser un tema interesante. Yo no soy una persona que esté muy puesta en videojuegos, a pesar de que tengo 5 hijos y los 5 juegan. Pero dicho eso, sí que creo que hay claramente un problema que hay que verificar. Yo creo que la Comisión ha sido muy clara. Condiciones justas y transparentes, ley de protección de consumidores, prácticas comerciales desleales, evaluación de impacto sobre la justicia o equidad digital. Y luego introduzco una que bueno, pues la han trasladado y es una posible fragmentación del mercado en cuanto a las resoluciones que pueden dar los diferentes Estados miembros sobre la cuestión que se plantea. Por tanto, desde la Comisión de Mercado Interior, desde mi grupo parlamentario, sí que vamos a estar muy atentos a esta iniciativa y vamos a hacer un seguimiento muy profundo de la cuestión. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. Now, Marion Walsmann.
Ja, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, zunächst ein großes Lob für die Initiatoren. Über 1 Million Unterschriften belegen die enorme europäische Relevanz dieses Themas und das große Interesse auf Seiten der Verbraucher. Wir brauchen eine Regelung auf europäischer Ebene, die in diesem Zusammenhang die Grundsatzfrage klärt. Bedeutet ein digitaler Kauf noch dauerhaftes Eigentum oder nur ein flüchtiges, widerrufbares Nutzungsrecht? Meine Frage an die Initiatoren bezieht sich auf die von der Industrie angeführten vermeintlich hohen Kosten für Offline-Patches. Wie entgegnen Sie dem Einwand, dass solche Auflagen Innovationen ersticken und speziell Indie-Entwickler finanziell überfordern könnten? Vielen Dank.
Vielen herzlichen Dank. For SND, René Repassi.
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. Does it mean I have now 3 minutes of the 3 committees altogether?
I was told it's a de Hond thing and you have 2.5 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can really put all your arguments on the table.
Ms. Laxarias, thank you very much. I take this also as a reminder of my past as an IMCO member, despite the fact that I'm here now acting as URI coordinator. Now, first of all, congratulations to the initiative to have reached the 1.3 million signature threshold. The ECI is always put forward as one of those elements that will bring us closer to citizens, but to actually get it done is making it extremely complicated. We only had 12 that were successful, and you reached the threshold already here. Congratulations to that, and that should show to us as lawmakers that what is put forward is of utmost importance. We must take this very seriously, and we should not get lost in legal nitty-gritty. In that context, therefore, my question. In my previous time as an IMCO member, I was responsible for the legislation on the right to repair. And it was just mentioned that the right to repair is not the right approach to the issue at hand. Hence, I would also rephrase it, whether we do not need, in particular for software and digital content, something like a right to resurrect. That in a situation where repair cannot be done, it has to be done in a way that licensing terms and others have to be looked at once they are basically expiring because a game is dead, that we then let it resurrect and have neglected software being reactivated, and whether that is a way to look at it. Also done from a legal term, like we did it with the right to repair. Second, I was wondering whether minimum guarantee periods could help us. Consumer protection law in the EU knows 2 years minimum guarantee period. That won't help here. But we have member states like the Netherlands that have an eternal guarantee period for the functioning of a product. And when we are revising consumer protection rules and we look at minimum guarantee periods, whether the matter could also be addressed by an eternal guarantee period or a longer guarantee period for such products. Third, and that is a different mindset, I like the comparison that you made with books and how we basically would react as citizens 1.0 if something comparable would happen to printed products. Don't we need for video games also something like a Project Gutenberg, something like a public library in which also video games are provided open access as a public service? And from that moment on, we do not look at it anymore from a private angle, but a public service angle, and that is also changing our ways of how to regulate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I had no one from PFE indicated, and we move to Piotr Müller is here. Yeah. For 2 minutes.
Okay. Dziękuję bardzo. Szanowni Państwo, przede wszystkim chciałem pogratulować inicjatorom tej inicjatywy i zebrania tej liczby głosów. To na pewno pokazuje, że ten problem jest rzeczywiście dostrzegalny przez środowisko graczy. Przede wszystkim chciałem ze strony grupy EKR zadeklarować poparcie dla tej inicjatywy. Oczywiście o szczegółach dotyczących tego, w jaki sposób mielibyśmy uregulować te gwarancje dla graczy, to jest kwestia tutaj już prac legislacyjnych bardzo szczegółowych, ale chciałbym tutaj jednoznacznie zadeklarować, że nasze wsparcie w tym obszarze macie. Ja bym chciał kilka słów powiedzieć w ogóle o tym obszarze, bo oczywiście my widzimy, jak przyspieszają technologie, jak przyspieszają nowego rodzaju usługi cyfrowe i widzimy też, w jaki sposób zachowują się niektóre firmy. Nie tylko mówię tutaj o firmach produkujących gry, ale na przykład platformy streamingowe, które wykorzystują różnego rodzaju mechanizmy, które no, nie są przynajmniej w takim ogólnym poczuciu sprawiedliwe. W związku z tym też dostrzegamy to, że jeżeli ktoś kupuje produkt i ma przekonanie o tym, że kupuje produkt, to musi mieć pełną wiedzę na temat tego, co się pod tym produktem kryje, jak on długo funkcjonuje i w jaki sposób jest zabezpieczone użytkowanie go przez konsumentów. Druga rzecz to inny temat, który chciałbym równolegle do tego poruszyć, to kwestia w ogóle innych usług cyfrowych, które widzimy. Również takich, które powodują, że na przykład część platform na jednolitym rynku europejskim rozróżnia ceny na różne kraje. Powinniśmy z tym walczyć. Już tutaj wielokrotnie rozmawialiśmy w Komisji IMCO o tym, żeby ta geolokalizacja i zróżnicowanie cen nie funkcjonowało w taki sposób. Ale jeszcze jedną rzecz, która jest oczywiście bardziej kontrowersyjna, ale chciałbym ją dzisiaj powiedzieć. Czy docelowo w ogóle nie powinno być możliwości handlu licencjami cyfrowymi na tych platformach typu Steam i tak dalej, jeżeli ktoś kupuje produkt, żeby w ramach wewnętrznej giełdy mógł również tą swoją licencją handlować, bo już jej nie potrzebuje i sprzedawać ją jak kiedyś dosłownie na płytach usługę, tak? Wiem, że platformy tego bardzo nie chcą, bo to oznacza rynek wtórny licencji dla gier, ale jest to rzecz, o której warto też pewnie w przyszłości tutaj porozmawiać. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you so much. For Renew, Nicola Minchev, our IMCO Vice Chair, and he's connected online for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would like to thank both the authors of the initiative and also the representatives of the European Commission who are present in this committee meeting. So on the 31st of March 2026, the French consumer organization UFC QCR, or sorry for the pronunciation, but the point is that the consumer organization brought a legal action against Ubisoft before court, following the closure of the servers of its online racing game, The Crew. This unilateral decision rendered the game completely unusable, depriving consumers of any use of a game that they had already purchased, without ever having been informed of any expiration date, to put it this way. Will the Commission consider supporting the case on the side of the consumer organization and support a referral to the Court of Justice of the European Union to ask for clarifications on the Unfair Contract Terms Directive, which the Commission previously identified was unclear in situations where a game is unilaterally rendered unusable by the video game publisher? And furthermore, many major video game titles have met the same fate, including Anthem and Concord, leaving European consumers with no recourse. And will the Commission commit to addressing this issue, the issue raised by the Stop Destroying Video Games European Citizens Initiative, through the Digital Fairness Act later this year? And if not, what assurances can the Commission give that this issue will be addressed through legislative action? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. For the Greens, Eva Catarina Vieira.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not usually in any of these committees, but I thought to come for the side quest. It is dangerous to go alone into the digital future without clear consumer protections, and I don't want to set the world on fire, but the truth is that the way we own media has shifted into something that's very sus. Too often, citizens buy a game only to find out that the cake is a lie. You buy a game you hope to cherish for years, but then one day it's suddenly gone. You think, shit, here we go again. When a publisher pulls the plug, we realize that our princess is in another castle. Our libraries are emptied. It's like we've died of dysentery. As we've heard, currently players are forced to see the purchases that they made completely vanish. We should not have to endure and survive a marketplace where our purchases, which are often masterpieces and they bring so much joy, are treated as disposable. We cannot allow digital preservation to take an arrow to the knee. So a petition was started to address all of these issues, and it is super effective. Let us therefore congratulate over 1 million citizens who signed it with one clear message to the EU. Don't be sorry, be better. It's time to finish the fight. We must ensure that even when companies move on, the virtual worlds we paid for remain still alive. Let us praise the sun on a new era of digital rights so that for the gamer of the future, it isn't simply game over. If some colleagues think that I've lost my mind a little bit, these were all video game references. I just wanted to thank the petitioners and say that the Greens EFA group stands here in support and hope that the Commission takes seriously these very practical suggestions that you brought today. Thank you.
I feel so old, I didn't understand your references. Now for 1 minute, Leila Taibi from the left.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. Yes, I'm going to speak in French. Je vous laisse le temps de mettre le casque sur les oreilles. Je voulais donc remercier les initiateurs de l'initiative citoyenne européenne pour leur initiative et pour leur présentation. Et c'est une initiative que le groupe de la gauche soutient à 100% et que nous considérons donc, comme vous l'avez très bien dit, comme une réponse aux pratiques déplorables, il faut le dire, des éditeurs de jeux vidéo qui n'ont qu'un seul but, c'est de maximiser leurs profits sur le dos des joueurs, des consommateurs et sur le dos des développeurs. Le fait de tuer ou de détruire un jeu vidéo, c'est une honte pour le consommateur, le joueur qui paye environ à chaque fois 80 € pour acheter un jeu quand il sort. Et à cette somme, il faut ajouter maintenant toutes les microtransactions en plus. C'est une honte également pour les développeurs, toutes les petites mains des jeux vidéo qui voient l'aboutissement d'années de travail s'évaporer à jamais à cause d'une décision purement comptable. Et généralement, ce n'est pas parce que les jeux sont mauvais que les éditeurs le ferment. Vous avez parlé tout à l'heure de The Crew, qui était un bon jeu de voiture. Il y a un certain nombre de jeux vidéo qui font partie de notre patrimoine culturel. Le problème, c'est qu'ils ne rapportent pas assez. Alors, je voulais vous poser la question, comment vous définiriez un état jouable pour un jeu vidéo? Que pensez-vous de la proposition très intéressante tout à l'heure là, du collègue Repasi d'une bibliothèque publique avec les jeux vidéo? Et est-ce qu'il ne faut pas prévoir une obligation de remboursement du jeu et des objets virtuels qui ont été achetés si on les supprime à la fin, si on les ferme? Merci.
Thank you. I had no speaker from ESN indicated, so we can have a first round of answers. So I give the floor back to the ECI organizers, and you have 10 minutes in total. Probably you can organize yourself internally.
Thank you very much. Am I allowed to? Yep. So coming at the question regarding the licenses, this is a typical confusion on the topic. An IP right holder is free to commercialize their IP for as long as they want. This is related to how long they want to make profit out of an intellectual property. This is making the following actions: reproduction, this is selling copies, distribution, communication to the public, etc. The consumer is not affected, as the consumer doesn't make reproductions, distribution, communication to the public, etc. He just paid the full price and plays the game. That's all. He doesn't use IP rights. Anyway, IP law is not absolute, we must remind, and I quoted Article 12, consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defining and implementing other union policies and activities. That includes IP as well. We're only asking to not destroy. A consumer keeping his, her own book, album, game doesn't hurt IP rights, given the fact that he paid a full price for the game in the first place, fulfilling the very goal of IP, which is making profit. That's all. Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I would now answer the question regarding the high cost of offline patches and curbing innovation. We are not asking to preserve games retroactively. What we are asking for primarily is game preservation. So this cannot be retroactive. This has to go into the future. So we ask the publishers to already start with the design process. So to design a game not to be basically switched off and be part of planned obsolescence. From our point of view, of course, if we would grandfather in games, of course, they weren't designed to have that requirement. That's why we are not trying to be unreasonable. Would we want all games to be preserved? Of course. Games that were developed 20 years ago still function. Games that were developed 3 years ago, as it was mentioned before, don't. It's a design decision. It's a business decision. And in terms of curbing initiative, innovation, I'm sorry, but it's always, if you have a golden goose and someone takes it from you or tries to regulate it, you will always say, oh, this will curb my innovation, just as it was, for example, with USB-C and Apple, or how it was with, for example, seat belts in cars. Before seat belts were introduced, the whole industry in the 70s or 60s, I believe, was screaming, oh, this will curb our innovation, and this will be such a huge problem, and until the regulation hit and we started having seat belts in our cars, airbags, everything else. We are not trying to engage their business model or create issues for them. They will get their money. They can keep using their business and monetizing however they want. Just please, once you stop supporting the video game, please do not destroy it. And that can be part of the design process. That doesn't have to be part of their business decision. Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit on the economic aspect. Again, when planned for from the beginning, the cost can be very small. It's mostly about when it's undoing that's more of a cost related. Earlier the game Concord was mentioned. That's actually an excellent example because it's publicly stated that at least 370 million euros were spent developing that game, and it did not include an end-of-life plan like what we're seeking. Most of the cost for developing games tends to come from other areas like art assets or marketing. This is just one element out of hundreds that already go into making a game. The other thing is sometimes industry costs or estimates of how much this would cost can be faulty because they're expecting the game they're asking for to have every last feature it did while it was being supported. And many of those can be retired and don't even make sense for a game that's no longer being supported, like administration or anti-cheat measures or account management or things like that. So that can drastically, there can be hundreds, known as microservices, associated with these that can be disabled and the customer still has the core game. So that should be taken into account when figuring out the potential cost. And it might have been mentioned earlier, but we also want to emphasize the companies have been paid already once for the working game, so that should be factored into the budgeting. There were some other points mentioned on the right to repair, whether we need it and how long a product should work. With right to repair, that's a little bit different issue. Well, that's certainly welcome, having the right to that. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are deliberate countermeasures to prevent repair. That it's almost a small miracle when it does happen from extremely experienced software professionals for resurrecting a game. However, if there were repair instructions, that would be very welcome. I think we would even consider that a viable alternative to what we're asking, if it was practical to resurrect the game that way. And for how long it should work, it's kind of again, the customer standard is indefinitely, as long as they keep the game in good working order on their end. And we're not trying to hold any publishers responsible for updates that break things that wasn't their doing. So how long they choose to support it, we're completely open to. I mean, I think there's already existing EU regulations on that, but I mean, as far as we're concerned, they could end support the next day, but as long as the game isn't destroyed, we would find that acceptable. And the last point on the, for doing this through the existing, just doing this through the courts, through legal action, that still doesn't get to the heart of the matter of the game itself being destroyed. We're not really refunds and compensation. Those are a secondary measure that when the game itself can't be reinstated, we just want the game preserved. So doing it through the existing framework doesn't quite get us there necessarily.
Maybe if I could add to this, doing this individually for every game in every court, can you imagine? That's why we are asking for regulation and harmonization on a European level, so that we have the same playing field. Choisy was mentioned. Legal action in France, there was one game, thousands of players, and it took several years to deal with this. Can you imagine this done 10,000 times in courts? This is not a viable way forward, and that's why we are sitting here.
Very quickly on the right to repair. Sadly, we as consumers don't have remedies of our own. That's the first thing. Second one, end-user license agreements prohibit any action. And third, consumers don't even have the right to do so. They don't even have the right to repair their games. It's not included in the directive as it is right now.
I just wanted to answer the questions related to the IP and consumer law. Consumers in the European Union nowadays, these who purchase...
Sorry, I think you have to switch it off and you have to switch it on.
No, sorry. I guess you hear me well. Okay, thank you. So I want to address the questions regarding IP and consumer law. Consumers in European Union who purchase digital versions of video games cannot benefit from the same level of consumer protection as those who purchase physical copies. The problem is that the distribution of the physical copies of the video games basically doesn't exist anymore. Even if an individual purchases a disc copy, it often does not contain the entire video game, and it requires connection to the publisher's server. And this only confirms that we live in fully digital era. If Madonna was to re-record Material Girl again, she would sing, we live in the digital world. So since we all agree that we live in an era in which digital content is distributed digitally without tangible medium, we must also agree that the consumers who purchase digital content, such as video games, must be protected the same or at least similar way as consumers who purchased a physical copy of the video game 10, 15 or 20 years ago. As the Court of Justice of the European Union stated many times, last time it was in case C-174/15 of November 2016, copyright must adapt to new economic developments. And this means nothing less than an obligation to interpret provisions of the EU law in dynamic, progressive manner. And when it comes to the solution, I wouldn't be myself if I wouldn't put a Latin phrase in it. Da mihi factum dabo tibi ius. Give me facts and I'll give you the law. And the facts are that consumers are left without adequate protection when it comes to the digital distribution of the video games. And society faces the risk of permanently losing cultural heritage in the form of video games. And the law, it is created in this very room, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering all the members' questions and also putting some Latin in our European Parliament. We now come to the second round of members and questions and remarks. We start with Peter Agius, EPP, and you now have all 1 minute per person.
Thank you, Chair. Big thanks to the organizers. Very, very smart presentation, very clear. I think you make a point loud and clear for all of us. Protection of consumers online should include protection of gamers online. I have heard in the same committee rooms 100 times that what counts online should count offline, or the contrary. And from the presentations and even from the Commission response, it is clear here we're speaking about unfair contract terms, misleading advertising, producer responsibility, and right to repair. All of these are put into question here. Briefly, I think I also have 3 kids at home, 3 teenagers, all of them are gamers. And there is also a point which is interesting here. There is a point of return on investments as well. Because I noticed that my kids, they spend, let's say, 20 euro, 30 euro to buy a game, sometimes 60 euro to buy a game. Then they spend money on a loot box. Then they spend money to get a shield to fight the trolls better, you know, or to do many other things. So basically, if this game is interrupted, you know, these guys have a stake. So let's find a way of course, promoting the industry and its welfare, because we are interested in that, but finding a good way of protecting also the right to stop destroying video games. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also remember a loot box hearing we had, I think, in the last term here in this committee. Now for SND, Sandro Ruotolo.
Grazie Presidente. Oggi parliamo di videogiochi online e quindi anche della necessità di creare un ambiente digitale sicuro per i nostri giovani. L'Europa ha sicuramente fatto dei passi importanti avanti negli ultimi anni, ma non tutti i videogiochi online rientrano pienamente nel quadro normativo europeo. Per questo chiediamo con forza standard chiari anche per questo settore: sicurezza fin dalla progettazione, moderazione efficace, strumenti di segnalazione accessibili, protezione automatiche per i minori. Abbiamo esempi positivi da cui partire. Penso al sistema europeo di classificazione dei videogiochi. Peggy, che da anni aiuta famiglie e utenti a orientarsi sui contenuti con classificazioni chiare e trasparenti. È buona pratica europea, ma oggi non basta più. Va rafforzata, aggiornata e resa coerente con l'evoluzione dei videogiochi online. Dobbiamo anche intervenire sui modelli di business che sfruttano i più giovani, scatole premi, meccanismi paga per vincere o paga per avanzare. Sono forme che avvicinano al gioco d'azzardo e questo è inaccettabile. Come relatore, e chiudo Presidente, della Commissione Cultura sull'impatto dell'ambiente online su minori, penso che bisogna vietare ai minori queste modalità dannose e limitare i contenuti casuali a pagamento nei giochi accessibili ai minori. Grazie.
Thank you so much. For Renew, Lucas Sieper.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely pressing F for the signatures. Let me maybe be the first MEP here, even though I'm not sure with my colleague from the Greens, to speak as a gamer, not as an MEP that I have been for 20 years. And I've been through it all, what you guys described. And I've seen the good side of it when it was a community that saved Mount and Blade Napoleonic Wars. And I've been through the bad side of it when I bought the crew a few months before they just turned it down. And I think maybe to illustrate the point, even though I also think you already realized that you have big support in this House, to illustrate the point one last time, I think a car, the crew, a car is the perfect example. Just imagine you buy a car, a modern car. Every modern car has software. And after 2, 3, 5, 10 years, the car company decides to turn it down, and you can no longer start the engine. A very good colleague of mine here, sitting here in this room, said you have to stand for what's right because it's right, even though if you're not affected personally. I am even affected personally, so I ask all my colleagues to support this very important initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For SND, Katharina Bali.
Yes, thank you very much. Also from my side, respect for the, ich spreche auf Deutsch, Respekt für die Initiatoren dieser Bürgerinitiative, mehr als 1 Million Unterschriften auf die, hinzubekommen, das ist wirklich eine große Leistung. Und es zeigt die Dringlichkeit dieses Anliegens. Es geht um sehr viel Geld. Es geht um mehr als 46 Milliarden Euro durch Ingame-Käufe, die weltweit generiert werden, mehr als durch Kino und Musik zusammen. Man kann das runterbrechen auf die Europäische Union. Und es geht ja nicht nur um den Kaufpreis. 42% der 50 umsatzstärksten Spiele im Jahr 2023 verwenden sogenannte Premium-Währungen, auch in Spielen mit einer Altersfreigabe von 12+. Die verschleiern die tatsächlichen Kosten und stehen aus meiner Sicht auch im Widerspruch zum EU-Verbraucherrecht. Und die Untersuchungen von Verbraucherorganisationen zeigen auch, dass Lootboxen erhebliche Risiken in Bezug auf glücksspielähnliche Mechaniken bergen und Suchtverhalten, vor allen Dingen für Minderjährige. Und es kostet eben alles Geld, das auch weg ist, wenn dieses Spiel nicht mehr gespielt werden kann. Deswegen meine Frage an die Kommission. Der Digital Fairness Act ist erwähnt worden. Besteht das Bedürfnis dort, diese Probleme zu regeln, die wir heute gehört haben, oder stehen Sie auf dem Standpunkt, dass die durch bereits bestehende Regelungen abgedeckt sind, wie es vorhin in der letzten Einlassung der Experten anklang? Und die zweite Frage, will die Kommission insbesondere eine europaweite Regelung auch zu Premium-In-Game-Währungen und Lootboxen treffen?
Thank you so much. So that concludes my list of MEP speakers. I would now give the floor back to the organizers of the ECI for 7 minutes.
Well, a lot of support statements, that makes the amount of questions and things actually to address very short. I think the point that was mostly mentioned was microtransactions, gambling inside games, loot boxes, all these kind of concepts that are also already partially addressed in the Digital Fairness Act. Yes, they are absolutely part of the problem. If I buy a game, let's say 60 euros, I know some friends, everyone here likely remembers the game Fortnite. I know some friends formerly from school that put a lot and lots of money into that game and into skins and other contents, and I used my money. I made a commercial transaction. So yes, it needs to be addressed. It is part of the issue. We have free-to-play games that are hugely in this case, Fortnite being one of the examples, but many others. And we have cases where people put in 2,000 euros into skins, and just shutting that down and taking that away is ridiculous. I think that should be all questions or statements.
Maybe your honors would like to know that the Spanish Congress is working on a project of law regarding this matter, the loot boxes, and the current focus is to restrict the commercialization of loot boxes to minors.
Since we're playing ping pong here, I'm going to add something too. We, at this very moment, to this day, in the California State Assembly, a bill that we've worked on is being brought in that also has microtransactions in them. We, in the first place, didn't actually look at them. The California State Assembly brought them in, so there is definitely room to add these things properly and find a good definition. Maybe not saying, okay, this is the product, but is there a commercial transaction going on? To address the issue, that would be an angle that the California State Assembly, for example, took.
Thank you so much. With that, I will give the floor back to the Commission, because there were actually also a lot of questions and also concrete action demands, I would interpret it, so probably you could reply to that.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Anna. 2 points from our side. So, first of all, I mean, a big thank you for these exchanges, because I think it really clarifies again, and thank you for the good questions from all the MEPs. And first of all, I mean, indeed, the consumers are not completely unprotected. I mean, I mentioned and we discussed now some of the rules, but what is really important is to address this specific issue that we have now on the table. And that's the reason why with my team, we're really looking at it and in depth and looking at different options. And we are, as you know, at the same time preparing the Digital Fairness Act that was announced by the Commission for the end of this year. Second point was the reference to the ongoing case at national level carried out by UFC Que Choisir, suing Ubisoft for the closure of the game The Crew. There, I mean, the question some of you were asking is whether the Commission will be a party to this case. I mean, as you know, it's a national case, so it follows really the French national legal proceedings, which is distinct really from the process that we have today with this European Citizens Initiative. So I also, Giuseppe, on the copyrights, give the floor to you.
Yes, and thanks very much. Very quickly, and to chip on what Axel Voss, who is the putative father of the copyright in the DSM directive, from a copyright viewpoint, the matter is a little tricky because there is no mandatory licensing imposed on video game developers. They enjoy contractual freedom to commercially exploit their works and determine the terms of their licenses. The framework does not provide for exceptions that cover end of life of a copyright product. Now, having said that, there is a provision in the directive on works that are no longer commercially available, and provides for the possibility of licensing such works through collective management organizations and cultural heritage institutions. Now, the problem, as pointed out by Mr. Repasi, is that cultural heritage institutions do not often hold in their libraries video games, and the provisions of the DSM directive of out-of-commerce works, which are set out in Article 8, include a number of conditions which may be difficult to meet for video games. Not the least, the possibility for the video games, for the right holders basically to opt out from the exceptions. Having said that, we are now undertaking a review of the copyright in the DSM directive. We will give it a very good thought, and we will revert fully on this issue in July. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this concludes our hearing. I mean, I can just say that I heard a lot of support from basically all the political groups for your initiative, and I can congratulate you again for the great work you have done, and all the citizens that were also engaged in the topic. I would just at the end give the floor also to the Vice Chair of PETI again, and then to the Jury Chair if you want to for some concluding remarks, please.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of PETI Committee, I obviously would like first to sincerely thank you everyone for the focused and constructive discussion we just had on the European Citizens' Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. And the hearing allowed us to fully listen to and assess the potential of the initiative. I would like to thank all the speakers who have brought further clarity to the issues under discussion. And today we have had the opportunity to understand directly from the organisers, experts and stakeholders about various challenges that arise when video games become unplayable after sale due to discontinued services or disabled access. And this initiative highlights a real concern for millions, and as far as we understand from the presentations, probably hundreds of millions European citizens, ensuring that digital purchases remain functional and that consumer rights are respected in the evolving digital landscape. I trust that the insights shared today will inform our continued work and will provide the European Commission with a clear understanding of the importance citizens attach to this matter. I encourage all participants to maintain the constructive dialogue and to consider the concrete proposals and experience discussed here as we move forward. Thank you once again for the contributions.
Well, thank you very much for your contributions. I can reiterate the broad support from three committees, and also I can reiterate that we will continue to follow this initiative and while we are maintaining the open dialogue with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you.